I made Uttapam, a famous South Indian breakfast. Think about how in the United States, most non-Italian people, when they think of Italian food, they're thinking of South Italy, like manicotti. And obviously that is Italian, but it's one part of the picture. Same thing with Indian food. They tend to be familiar with North Indian food. They don't know anything about South Indian. South Indian food to me is not only brighter and fresher, it's objectively healthier, using way less like butter and cream. So let's talk about what we need to make uttapam. First, I'm going to start with my chutneys. The first thing that you saw there was urad lentils, chana lentils. This is coriander seed. We have fenugreek or methi, methi seeds. We have cumin seeds.
This equipment controls the temperature and humidity.
I also have 4 cloves of garlic here that I'm starting out with. I'm going to end up using way more than that. And I also have ginger root. I'm going to be peeling up that ginger root and giving it a rough chop. I have some curry leaves. These I grow in my own backyard. A lot of Indian stores will sell them. Mustard seed. I have some California chilies. Now, if I had access to an Indian store, I would have bought a different kind of chili, probably like Kashmiri chilies. But California chilies are equally non-spicy, and that's why I'm using them. I'm also using hing powder, H-I-N-G, hing powder. I'm using some standard dried red chilies, salt, and not pictured here, I have tamarind pulp or tamarind paste and jaggery, which is coconut palm sugar. Okay, I'll show you what I'm doing to get started. I just, as I said, I used my vegetable peeler and I peeled my ginger. I have about a cup of the ginger, and then I'm using 4 garlic cloves. I also use the back of my knife to press down on each garlic clove to smash it and break the skin away. And then they just kind of naturally started to fall apart. With about a teaspoon and a half of oil, I just used canola oil, on a low-ish, something between low and medium heat. I'm sauteing this just for a few minutes. I'm trying to take some of the raw taste out of them, but really be careful with this because garlic can burn, and if your garlic burns, this whole thing is ruined. You'll have to throw it out. Garlic gets a weird and bitter taste when it's burnt. So we're not trying to brown the garlic, we're just very mildly taking the rawness out of these 2 ingredients. So something between low and medium.
I love this man's tangents. Oh my lord.
Okay, I scraped them out of the pan. I added an additional teaspoon of oil, and I used the oil that remained also in the pan here. And I'm going to add, starting clockwise from
last
12
time I
o'clock,
talked
chana
to
dal, cumin, coriander,
Caitlin, she asked
fenugreek
me.
seeds, and urad lentils.
Last time I talked to Caitlin,
so
she asked me like if Nacho ever has skin issues, and I knew where we were going with that.
It's not an exact science.
Maybe it could be,
with the
but it could
exception
also be
of
she just has
that
a
fenugreek, the methi seeds. I
fungal
do
infection
recommend
on
that
her
you
skin.
add
She needs to
something
see the
between
doctor.
like no more than like a quarter to a half of a teaspoon, because that is a really strong flavor. It has a slight, almost like a licorice undertone. In the right amounts, it's fantastic. In the wrong amounts, it's just overpowering. So after those got about 3 to 4 minutes to saute gently in the heat, I added in my California chilies. Now I cut those up and I removed all of the seeds. I don't really want to add too much spiciness to this, not too much. I feel like just the skin of the California chilies is enough for me. And since I'm making a large batch that I'll be saving not just for this breakfast, and we have guests quite frequently, I will be taking advantage of the fact that I can make all of my chutneys spicier at the moment of serving, and I'll show you more about that toward the end. But for right now, I want mild spiciness. So again, this is on something between low and medium heat. I'm just stirring this up and allowing the chili skins to infuse the oil with their gentle heat. Not pictured at the last minute, I did add the garlic and the ginger back in. Basically, I had already turned the heat off. So here you see my cinnamon paste. I think I added about 2 teaspoons, and then I also added about 2 teaspoons of jaggery powder. I had to blend this in batches because I'm using a really small blender. I have other blenders, but this is the one that I like to use for Indian food, spicy food. This blender is strictly for all those ingredients have been cooked so far. They're being blended together, and I did need to add a little bit of water. I would say it's hard to say because I had to do it in like 3 batches. Probably I ended up adding about a little over a half of a cup of water in total. I only want enough water to get it blendable, but still keep it as much as possible a thick paste. So you might need to play around with the ratios a little bit there. I should also add, I waited to put any of that into the blender until all of the ingredients had cooled. It went into the blender. Now I put it into a container. All right, that was a ginger chutney. So now I'm going to make a coconut cilantro chutney. I am using some ginger, but as you see, it's just a few small pieces. Ginger is not the star of this show in the case of this chutney. I have 1 full poblano pepper that I've cut up into strips. I have a few cloves of garlic.
Oh, wow.
And I have 1/2 of 1 red onion that I've cut into slices. If I were in India, there is a different chili that I'd be using. But I find that the poblano is a nice substitute. And again, not everyone who eats this is going to be able to handle the typical level of heat. Now, for coconut flakes, the traditional way would be to use fresh coconut. I have found that this comes out fantastically using coconut flakes. You can use sweetened or unsweetened, and that's because if you didn't use the sweetened, which I'm not going to, I'm going to use the unsweetened. I'm going to save the sweetened one for cake. You'll still end up having to use some jaggery powder in there anyway to balance the sweet, the savory, the spicy. So once all of the other ingredients that you had just seen, the onions, the ginger, the garlic, the poblano pepper, had a minute or a few minutes to saute, in went about 1 cup of packed unsweetened coconut flakes. And again, you can use sweetened. I let that saute for about 1 minute, and then I added in about a cup and a half of cilantro leaves. At this point, I think I've turned off the heat. I added about a teaspoon of salt, stirring this around, still quite hot. I'm going to allow it to cool. And then again, because I used unsweetened coconut, I did need to add about a teaspoon of jaggery powder. This is a lovely mix of sweet, spicy, savory, fresh from the salty, fresh from the cilantro. So I set that aside. That needs to cool before it can go into the mixie jar. Finally, number 3 chutney that I'm making is a groundnut or a peanut chutney. I'm starting off with about a cup and a half of raw, unsalted peanuts. Just gently dry roasting them in the same pan. We have not yet once had to wash out this pan. At maximum, I just wiped it out with a paper towel. Once those had toasted on low to medium heat for a few minutes, they're no longer really raw. I've added about 2 heaping tablespoons of red lentils and the other half of my chopped up red onion, or I should say sliced red onion. Just saute that in about a teaspoon of oil. We're looking for the onion to become soft and translucent. Now I'm adding about, it wasn't quite a teaspoon of cumin. It was like, I think I put in like 3/4 of a teaspoon of cumin. It's not this is not quite an exact science. Okay, now I'm adding back in my groundnut and peanut, and added about a teaspoon of salt. I've also added in 2 dried red chilies, not the California, mind you. In this case, I did use like standard dried red chili. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I must have put the phone down and it was still recording. So why wouldn't we just throw in everything together? Why did I have to do the peanuts separately? That's because the other ingredients, that is the like the onion, they have a natural moisture to them, and if I had tossed everything in the pan together, the onions probably would have had a chance to soften up and get translucent, but their liquid would have released onto the peanuts, and nothing would have had a chance to dry roast to become brown. I really don't know what I was doing there. I think we were talking politics. But if you saw that, I did just add a tiny bit of red Kashmiri chili powder. Again, the Kashmiri chili powder is not the same in the Indian grocery store as chili powder. There's 2 kinds. You see chili powder and Kashmiri chili powder. Kashmiri chili powder is very, very mildly spicy, so I added about a teaspoon of that in here. It gives more flavor than it does actually heat and color. And then I'm also going to add about maybe barely a teaspoon, like 3/4 of a teaspoon of jaggery powder. That's not really enough to make this whole thing sweet. It just helps kind of balance out the saltiness. So this is just lovely. We're going to have 3 chutneys that are a lovely mix of balance of sweet, salty, savory, spicy. Now both of these chutneys ingredients have been placed on a paper plate. Yes, I absolutely take advantage of convenience products in the kitchen, so I have fewer dishes and fewer things to be hassled with. The ingredients of both of those do need to cool completely before they start to be mixed in a mixie jar. And again, add water as needed. Okay, here I took pre-chopped matchstick carrots from the bag from the grocery store. I've also added about half of 1 red onion. You can't see it, but I added another 1 poblano pepper chopped up, and I salted that. And I did that because that's going to be the topping for our uttapam. Salting it now is going to help dry out some of the water from those vegetables. It'll also help it taste better. This is the Gits brand of uttapam. This is not the traditional way to make uttapam. I'll show you how I learned how to make uttapam as a child. Even though my grandparents originally from North India, they never learned any of this, but I had a little chance as an adult to live in South India. Wonderful experience, and I learned how to make everything that South Indian people make. And this is not the traditional way. The traditional way is you allow certain kinds of lentils and rice to soak for like 12 to 24 hours. You grind that up. You allow that wet mix to ferment for another 24 hours. And then, then you have your batter. It's not hard, but it does require a good 2 days of thinking ahead to make it happen. Well, with the Gits, you don't have to do that. The powder is already ground for you. Now, they are getting a lot of the fermentation action from sodium bicarb or baking soda. So it doesn't taste quite the same. It's like, I'll say you're getting about 80 to 85% of the good taste and texture that you'd be getting if you made it yourself. On the other hand, this costs like $1.25, and you're still getting something tasty. Also, the salt, the dried chili, the what does it say here? It says green chili, dry ginger powder, fenugreek seeds powder. So a lot of the flavor and the salt that's required for it. In the case of this one, 11 ounces used like not even a half of a teaspoon of oil between these three. And I continued to grind up to blend up my chutneys. Now, once I poured the batter, I made little individual pancake size looking things. I just topped it with onion, carrot, poblano pepper, and any remaining cilantro that I had. And I just did that with the batter until I had all my pancakes. Now, I told you that there is a way to make your chutney spicier at the point of serving. This is how you do it. You can make something called a tadka. That's a mix of oil or clarified butter, typically some kind of lentils. This is a tadka pan. I'm not using that because it's more suitable for a gas stove, and here at Eric's place there is only an electric stove, so I need something with a flat bottom. So I'm going to use the smallest possible saucepan that I have. A lot of different things can be used to make the tadka, but the base of it is going to be, like I said, is either oil, like some neutral oil. It can be vegetable oil or canola oil. I am using clarified butter this time because I just like the little extra flavor that it gives, but you could totally just use canola oil or vegetable oil. And I'm going to put in some urad dal.
I thought you were going to take them out first. So.
Mustard seeds, dried red chili, and a couple of, what did I say? Urad dal, dried red chilies, curry leaves, mustard seed. And then while that is piping, boiling hot, and you're going to know that your oil is really hot enough when your mustard seeds splatter and crackle, then you can just pour that over top of your chutneys right at the point of serving. And not only does it do something special to their flavor, that additional layer of fat as somebody dips their uttapam into the chutney, fat transfers flavor, and so it's going to do something magical to the chutney. But this is also your opportunity to heat up the chutneys in terms of their spice level. When I have guests, they may not be able to eat something quite so intensely chillified. I serve that with a little bit of like raita, like a yogurt on the side. There's a lot of science to show that the South Indian diet is so beneficial to our guts, because keep in mind that the modern Western diet does nothing to feed the natural flora of your gut microbiome. Whereas Uttapam, idli, dosa, all of these things that are typical South Indian foods, they rely very heavily on fermented lentils that have a positive effect on the inside of our bodies. Recent studies have come out to show that when your gut microbiome is not balanced and healthy, can actually affect your brain operations, and that many feelings of mental fog, frustration, even depression, a lot of those things can feel alleviated for people once they get their gut microbiome in check. Now, if you remember those Jamie Lee Curtis commercials from the early aughts, the Activia commercials, that was a probiotic. Pro meaning it feeds the good bacteria, good things that are in your gut, right? But what about prebiotic? You also need the things that bring the good stuff to your gut in the first place. And so if all you are eating is a Western diet that is not bringing the party, so to speak, of good gut microbiome, then the Activia yogurt might be wonderful, but it doesn't have anything to feed. It's something to consider, particularly since Uttapam, dosa, idli, all of these are just delicious foods. So tasty food can be your medicine. I really hope that you'll try this. This was not a quick and easy thing, only because I made those chutneys, all three of them in one day. But keep in mind, all of those chutneys, I'm going to be dividing them up into individual serving size portions, and that way my husband and I, we can just grab them as we're ready to eat. And whether I'm using my own homemade dosa or uttapam batter, or whether I'm using that Gits instant fast food pre-made batter. Either way, that takes just no more time than it would take you to make Bisquick pancakes. But this is going to be healthier. We're not going to be dumping a load of corn syrup, sugar, pancake syrup on it. We're going to be using some healthier chutneys, and they're already ready to go for at least 5 more breakfasts for the 2 of us. My husband's favorite out of these 3 chutneys is absolutely the coconut cilantro chutney. We tend to eat the ginger chutney in a much smaller container. That one is just one we need in small doses. But he needs like triple or quadruple the amount of chutney of the cilantro coconut one. If you have any interest to try this, let me know. If you have a concern that to buy all of these ingredients for making just one thing is a lot, I'm going to be making a video pretty soon to show. I'm going to be walking around my local Indian grocery store to show what are some ways that people can get into Indian cooking in a much more affordable way. There's no need to go out and spend 70 pounds or $80, whatever, on a ton of spices just to make one dish or to just get your feet wet. Especially if you're a single person or you are the primary grocery bill payer, that's just not possible. I hope that you will try this or that this will inspire you. Take care. Bye.